Welcome to the 2-day Advanced Finance and Property Mastermind and Express Weekend all in one, because effectively what I'm going to do is, this one's actually getting recorded. So I'm actually going to do, today I'm going to spend a long time on finance and due diligence. I'm going to change the content a little bit. And then tomorrow we're going to do the bus trip, which will be very exciting. These events are actually the most exciting events that I do all year round. And they're the smallest as well. And I like to keep them under 30 people. So I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the whole weekend. Who's excited? Yeah?
Yay.
Who thinks the property market in the last few weeks has taken a turn? You can see it. Can you guys feel it? It's in the media already, consumer sentiment. If you're reading RP data, the index is up slightly. I've been talking to agents in Melbourne. The listings are up, inquiries are up by 10%. You know, auction clearance rates have hit mid-60s, which means, you know, that's a really good thing, because a lot of vendors are still very unrealistic about, you know, how much their houses are worth. Who would agree that all the vendors always think the house is worth $100,000 more than it should be, right? So the reality of what's happening, it's a really exciting time because, and it's perfect timing as well because we're recording this, because I can really sense there's a turn in the market in the last couple of weeks. So it's a really exciting time. We're at 6 o'clock on the property clock, about to go into an upward growth in Melbourne, which is very exciting. So we've got a lot of contents to cover. You're going to have headaches at the end of today, I can tell you, I can guarantee it. There's going to be a lot of mathematics, okay? There's going to be a lot of charts, a lot of graphs. There's going to be random regression analysis. There's going to be a lot of crunching numbers, okay? But we've got to get through all that stuff. So tomorrow, when we're looking at projects around Melbourne and we're meeting developers, you know, you can look at a project with the eyes of an investor rather than the eyes of an owner-occupier. And that's one of the most important things about property investing, is to make sure that when you're investing in property, you distinguish between, you know, what it is to look at a property as an investor in terms of cost per square metre, capital growth, rental yield, versus an owner-occupier, which is, I love the carpets, I love the street, you know, the kitchen looks nice, all that kind of stuff. So, and I want to congratulate you guys for taking time out of your life as well, and taking action and being here as well, especially the little one. How old is she?
Turning 5 actually.
Jesus, I wish I knew at 5 what I know now, I'll tell you. I would add like at least 3 zeros to my bank balance. Yeah, it's never too early to start. So that's probably, I think she's the youngest one I've ever had in my events, so she'll do well. She's got the pen and paper ready as well, so ready to take notes. Now, one thing before we start is I'm going to email you this whole PowerPoint presentation on Wednesday. So you're going to get this whole thing emailed to you. So it's not, you don't have to frantically take down every single thing that I talk about. And there's going to be a lot of content, so I have to warn you. However, what I would like you to do is to grab a piece of paper and just put down the heading of key distinctions on top of the paper. And the key distinctions is the things that I really want you to take down and really take away from this event. Because how many people here have been to events before where you've taken like 150 pages worth of notes? Yeah? And what happened to those notes? Right? You come home, you put them on the bookshelf, and then what happens? 2 years later, when you're tidying up, you go, oh gee, that was a really good event. Remember we drew all these, what are these circles and what are these notes? Must go to this website urgently. Do you remember that? I did it all the time, and I've been going to events since I was 18. You know, so I've got books in my garage, folders, from Anthony Robbins, from all these different events that I've done, that I've literally come home after 4 days, wrecked, put them away, never looked at them again. You know, 10 years later, they're still there. And I hate them now, actually. You know, it's like a reminder of what I should have implemented this stuff. So rather than you taking, you know, hundreds and hundreds of pages of notes, I actually encourage you guys just to do 2 pages. One is key distinctions. The other page, I want you to put down the heading, Mastermind Team. And if I can get you to fill out those 2 pages over the next 2 days and just focus on those 2 pages, they are the essence of what it takes to build and structure a large property portfolio and retire from property. The first key distinction that I want you to write down before we even get into all the contents is I want you to write down the 4 most dangerous words for property investors. And they are, this time it's different. They're the most 4 dangerous words for property investors. This time it's different. Do you know the PowerPoint I'm about to show you hasn't changed in 4 years? It's the same PowerPoint that I created in 2008. Nothing's really changed. Would you agree St Kilda and South Yarra are still good areas to invest in property? Yeah? Would you agree Melton's not a good area to invest in property? Yeah. you can live in Melbourne, but not for capital growth, right? Because if you're looking at 20-year history, it has underperformed. So really nothing's changed in the market. And the thing that's really alarming to me, having now invested over 2 property cycles, is every single year people say, well, this time it's different, Konrad. So I'm going to go back and show you the property market in Melbourne and Australia since 1901. We're going to study all the property cycles and all the history of the market going back when property median prices were about $1,000. Because really, there's nothing new that's happening now. You know, sure, the interest rates have changed, a few loans have disappeared, low docs are gone, you know, new consumer credit code came in, you know, but that's all irrelevant stuff. The main big picture stuff has not changed. You know, since I started investing when I was 18, there's really nothing new in property. And it's become really boring for me now. So you know, I'm still excited about teaching people how to do it because I like seeing people getting results and, you know, I'm doing renovations. I'll show you some of the stuff that I'm doing now with properties, property developments and renovations and stuff like that I enjoy doing. But really there's been nothing new happening in property, you know, over the last 10 years. There's a perception that it's new or it's different this time, but those perceptions are built by people who haven't invested through 2 property cycles. It's the same articles that are coming out right now that were coming out, you know, in 2001, 2002, before the last property boom in Melbourne. So I'm going to go through all that stuff with you, but those are the most 4 dangerous words for property investors. That somehow this time it's different, it's unique, and people always think that every single year. So let's get started. So we've got the 21st Century Property Express Weekend, which is my favourite event because what it is, I like to keep the groups really small so we can interact more, we can have more questions and answers. How many people here are members of Property Direct? Majority of you, yep, probably. How many are non-members? How did you guys sneak in? Let's get them. No, I'm kidding. Let's get them. Join us. No. These events are only for members only, but we do allow sometimes friends of people to come as well if they're investing in a group or you know, if they're doing a joint venture. Best way to lose friends and family is to do a joint venture, by the way. But you know, we do encourage that. And also, it's really about hands-on. It's about for people getting started because you know what I found is when I started doing these events, initially when I was structuring the contents for a lot of the events that I was doing, I couldn't understand why if I had 200 people in the room, why after, you know, 3 months, 20 or 30 of them went out and bought property and the rest wouldn't buy property. So then I thought, you know what, why don't I just, maybe it's the contents, maybe I have to become micro level detailed with everything. And then I increased the contents and went micro level with the contents. And including like literally, and you see some of the contents today, like I'll give you the exact loans you need to go to set up with ANZ. And I'll give you the exact terminology you need to, how you need to speak to your bank manager in order to have that. But you know what? The stats still didn't change. So then I thought, maybe it's a psychology. Maybe the people that are actually implementing have done some psychology training, you know, like in terms of you know, a lot of the Jamie McIntyre stuff, the 4-day stuff. It's the mindset. And that wasn't the case either because people that did psychology still didn't implement. So then I thought, well, what if I just give them the physical phone numbers to these people to ring them? Like, you know, I'll drag the mortgage broker on stage. And I'm really fortunate today we're going to have one of the top mortgage brokers in Australia, Michelle Coleman, joining us. And she won the top 10 mortgage broker awards, I think 3 years in a row. And she's been on the cover of different magazines. So what if I give you all the details? You know what? That still didn't change. And I think that the missing thing was that there's a fear factor that occurs because people, you cannot replicate walking around on the development site with the plans, looking at projects, you know, and really walking around the streets. And I think it's that tangible aspect of property that is the missing ingredient for most people implementing. If you actually go out there and you look at projects and you walk around and you see the properties, walk on site, you have your plans with you, you've got your depreciation schedules, your rental appraisals, it becomes more tangible, and I think it's easier for people to take action. And that's why the Sunday, tomorrow, which is the most exciting part of this event, is for me to take you out of the classroom environment and actually take you into a real life scenario where we're going to look at 5 different projects. So the whole thing is designed to teach you how to build and structure a multi-million-dollar property portfolio, which is what I've done myself, and I'll go through the properties that I've secured myself today. I'll show you the exact properties I've purchased, what I'm doing. So it's a formula that really I haven't developed, by the way, because I've just taken bits and pieces from all these different people and put it together. So none of the stuff that I'm teaching is actually new. Majority of it I've learnt working for NAB, you know. So it's boring finance stuff, you know, that you've got to know. So I want to spend a little bit of time today about investor psychology because the mindset is the most important thing about investing, and I'm going to relate that back into property investing and what that means exactly. for property investors. I'm going to talk about finance. Finance is everything, guys. Let me give you an example. How many people would agree that a 4-bedroom house in Melbourne is a good investment, yeah? Or Toorak, yeah? Or Brighton. So what's the issue with buying a 4-bedroom house in Melbourne? Oh, it's 1.6 mil, the rental yield is 3% or 2.75, which means I'm negatively geared $1,000 a week, right? Or what's the other challenge? I can't get the loan, right? I can't get the gap between negative gearing and the loan repayments. I can't get a deposit together. But see, all those questions are not actually property related questions, are they? They're finance related questions. So we kind of know in Melbourne where the good properties are and where the good suburbs are. We know that Q's a good area to invest in, yeah? We know that, Brunswick is a good area to buy, Yarraville, Williamstown, they're good areas to invest in, right? But what's stopping most people is actually nothing to do with property. Most things that are stopping people from investing are finance related. And that's one of the areas that is extremely neglected in Australia. And I'm going to spend at least 3 or 4 hours today just purely on finance. Because that's the number one thing that people don't understand, how to structure and build your property portfolio correctly. The cool thing about finance, guys, is there's only one way of setting it up. You see, with property, there's a lot of different strategies. Would you agree? How many people here have renovated before? Yeah? How many people have bought off the plan? How many people have subdivided? Yeah, so there's a lot of different strategies, right? So it can go on and go on. But with property portfolio structuring, there's only one way to do it. There is no two ways. So you're either going to get it right or you're going to stuff it up completely. Which is really good because I'm going to give you the blueprint on how to set it up. And then I'm going to give you the exact terminology of the loans that you need to set up. And you're going to get the best broker in Australia, arguably, to set it up for you. So you really cannot get this part of it wrong. Like if you get that, ring me if I've missed anything out. Right? So that part of it is really good because really there is no two ways of doing it. There's hundreds of ways to make money out of property and lose money out of property as well. But with finance, there's only one way to set yourself up, which is really, really good because it's easy. So that part of the thing you can just tick off and move on to other sections. So a lot of the things that I'll talk about over the next 2 days, I have found there is one best way of doing certain things. And I encourage you to do the same. You don't have to at the end of the day. For example, I found that BMT quantity surveyors give you the highest depreciation for properties compared to all other quantity surveyors in Australia, and I've tested all of them personally. So I've actually had 6 different quantity surveyors do a depreciation schedule on one property, and BMT came in at the highest. Now, if you're going to get a depreciation schedule, why wouldn't you use BMT, It's just crazy not to do it. So there are things that you can just say, well, that's the best way of doing it. I'll just move on to the next one. But other things, there is so much variety and options, and that's where you really need to work out what is most appropriate for your situation. That's one. There's other things that you need to actually, and we'll go through that today in detail. We're going to talk about the Australian property market, which is really the most misunderstood market, I think, out of anything that I've come across. In terms of understanding what it's going to do and why it's doing what it's doing. And we've got a lot of different opinions about this market. Mainly the opinions are conflicting. We have economists who are conflicting between themselves. So you have, for example, Dr. Stephen Keen saying the market is going to, well, he was saying the market apparently was going to crash, 3 years ago by 40-60%. At the same time, Christopher Joel, another economist, was saying, you're insane, it's not going to happen because of the following reasons. So even economists don't agree what's going to happen. Then you've got real estate agents talking about specific areas which are completely unrelated to each other, talking about the market. And then you have property investors with different points of view. So you can see all these different conflicting, and then you've got the media, which always jumps on the negative aspect of, it's all going to crash, everyone's going to lose money. So you've got all these different, noise, I guess, out there. And that's why a lot of it is white noise, and you've got to filter it out. And you've got to get to the core thing about what it is. What is the Australian property investment market? So I'm going to spend, good time today talking about what makes our market completely unique compared to the USA market, the UK market, and all the other markets. And I'm also going to give you a bit of an understanding of what's going to happen tomorrow. We're going to go through due diligence today on the projects that we'll see tomorrow. And specifically, I'm going to pick one property, which is in St Kilda, one development that I'm going to pick apart in micro level. So you get to understand of how I look at a property and what you should be looking at when you're making a buying decision. when you're looking at a property in terms of due diligence. And your ability to break down and analyse property unbiasedly, unemotionally, will determine how successful you're going to become as an investor. You have to take all the emotion out of the equation when you're looking at property, which is very difficult to do because we're emotional beings, would you agree? And we justify with logic. So you've got to kind of have a level of detachment. And if you do that, if you learn that skill, you're going to make a lot of money in property. If you let emotion into the equation, then you're not going to be successful very much. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, a lady came up to me and she said, I live in Hyatt, I only want to invest in Hyatt. Okay, I know the area really well. I've been there for 23 years. We really know the area back to front, and I really want to invest in Hyatt. I said, okay, so do you know what the capital growth has been in Hyatt for the last 20 years? No. What about the vacancy rates? Did you know what vacancy rates? No. What about the rental yields? What are the rental yields like in Hyatt? Because I know Cheltenham, I know those areas, but never really done research. I don't know what they are. What about the infrastructure and future spending by the council? Any areas getting rejuvenated in the area? I don't know. What about schools and infrastructure? Anything going in there? I don't know. So what is it about Hyde that you know, apart from living there? So it's like kind of like people, if you happen to live in a good suburb in terms of capital growth and you invest, you're going to make money. But if you happen to live in an area that historically hasn't had good capital growth, but could be a really good area to live in for lifestyle, you might not be maximising what you're doing. So you've got to kind of detach yourself from where you're living, because where you live is purely an emotional decision, and you should live with your families where you're comfortable living. But where you're investing, it should be completely different. And that's the hardest thing for investors to do, because people kind of get comfortable in the comfort zone around where they live, because they do research by accident. Because you're just walking around there all the time and driving around. So if you're living in key areas, and I'll talk about suburbs in Melbourne that I believe are really good opportunities, and I'm going to get really specific, not even the suburbs, I'm going to talk about streets in Melbourne that are really good opportunities over the next 5 years if you really want to make a lot of capital growth. And I'll talk about suburbs that you should stay away from completely, because I don't believe they'll ever do anything. And I'll talk about why. And some people will get upset, but hey, I'm talking about investing, I'm not talking about living for lifestyle. For example, my favourite area to live in eventually, I'll probably retire there, is Donvale. I like big acreages, I love those areas where you don't see your neighbours, where you're like, 2,000 metres away from next door, right? But would I invest there for capital growth and rental? Probably there's no market for those properties to be rented. Who wants to maintain tennis courts and all those kind of areas, So where I like to live eventually, it's not convenient now, obviously, because of work and everything else. But eventually to retire in is probably not the best area for me to invest in. And I don't invest in that area unless it's going to be for subdivision, which will be, something we'll see. So basically, we've got classroom environment, and tomorrow we've got a field trip where we take you out physically onto the road, which is really cool. So what we're going to do is finance today as well. A lot of finance, a lot of interest rates, fixed, variable, what kind of loans you should be taking out, buying property in trusts versus your own name, buying in self-managed super funds, all that kind of stuff we'll cover today. So you're going to get a really good understanding of what to do. Plus you get all the contacts as well, accounting, all your different key people that you need to put together to make it happen. Creative mindset. I want to talk about a lot of psychology, so you can start thinking about what belief systems you have to have as an investor in order to become successful in property investing. Because mindset is 80% of the equation. If you've been to, who's been here to a 4-day Education for Life event with Jamie McIntyre? The formula for success, which is kind of universal, is 80% of success is psychology, which is mindset, and 20% is specialised knowledge. So you've got to have the right mindset, you've got to have all the belief systems in place in order for you to implement different things, and especially in order to break down and challenge your conditioning that you've been given by your friends, family, social groups. Because a lot of the beliefs that your parents hand down to you are not necessarily good beliefs to have. Would you agree? Especially about money and ownership. This is not a part that I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to focus purely on the 20%. Okay, I'm going to focus on the stuff that, okay, once you have this, what do I need to do, Konrad, to make it happen? My objective really is to give you this 20%, that specialised knowledge, the micro stuff. Because I think of most people when they come to my events, because they've been through the 4-day and they've been through a lot of training. They're like, Konrad, I get it. Just show me what to do, okay? I get it. I know money's, yes, money's good. I'm deserving. Property's good. Just show me what I need to do. And that's what I'm going to do over the next 2 days. All that micro stuff. 52-point due diligence criteria. So this is a criteria that I've developed myself to basically analyze property in an unbiased way. And I'm going to give you that due diligence criteria. It's like a checklist. And if your property ticks all the boxes, especially the first probably 15, chances are this is what I call the maximized property, which means that property has a really good chance of outperforming the market. If it doesn't tick the first 5 or 6, you should let it go very quickly. And this is a very specific criteria. It's to do with density, cost per square meter, capital growth history, vacancy rates. So you can eliminate 95% of properties using this criteria. Now, you can appreciate, in my position as a CEO of 21st Century Property Direct, and because of Jamie's contacts, I get phone calls from developers every single day offering projects for us to offer to our members. The irony is, none of the projects that I actually source, none of them have contacted me. I've actually called them, because I know where they develop and I know the reputation's really good. So I haven't actually accepted any of the ones that call me every single day. The conversations that I have with developers are very quick. I can eliminate properties within a few seconds. For example, this week I had phone calls from Queensland, which automatically, anything outside of Brisbane 7Ks, I'm just not interested. I don't care what it is. How quick is that as an elimination formula? Where is it? Oh, it's that. Next. Anything over 50, eliminate it automatically. Over 50 means it's a high density development based on valuations, so you're going to get lower valuations. So I'll go through the criteria. It's very quick, and if your property matches this, then chances are, not guarantees, but chances are you're stacking the odds in your favour and this property's favour of it outperforming the market. Most of the criteria is based around lending and finance and how properties are valued, as well as the fundamentals of the area: capital growth, vacancy rates, population growth, demographics, etc., etc. This took me probably 10 years to develop, and I developed this myself purely just for my own due diligence that I've used. And it took me about 6 months to articulate all the points, because what I was doing is people were asking me, well, how come you rejected this project and this project you accepted? And I said, because of the following reason. Well, where is that written down? Can I have that? I said, well, it's just in here. So I started to write down all the points to make it usable by other people. We're going to go through the property investor analysis software at the end of how to crunch numbers, how to do cash flow scenarios on individual properties and multiple properties. How many people here are currently using Summersoft property investor analysis software? No one? How many have never heard of it before? You have to get it. Okay, it's been around for 20 years. We don't sell it. Jan Summers developed it. If you're going to read the best book about property investing, please write this down in your key distinction. It was written over 20 years ago. It's called More Wealth Through Property by Jan Summers. Jan Summers was a primary school teacher in Queensland, and she retired with over 50 properties. Ian Summers, her husband, developed this particular software. And this software allows you to do multiple cash flow scenario analysis on properties at the same time. And I'm going to use it with you when we do the due diligence at the end. I'm going to throw some property figures in there and show you how it works. And I use this every day for myself. I don't even know how people can get past the third or fourth property without this software. Software is around $250. You buy it, you get it updated pretty much for life. You can, you can buy it in groups, whatever. But it's just one of these tools that, if you're a plumber, you need your tools. If you're a property investor, this is an essential tool that you need to have. So I'm going to show you the website. I'm going to show you how to get this software as well. So we're also going to talk about a magic formula for wealth creation, which is DSR ratios, debt serviceability ratios. And this is the formula that the banks use to either approve or reject a loan. If there is a magic wealth formula for creating wealth through property, it's debt serviceability ratios. If you understand debt serviceability ratios, you can pretty much borrow as much money as you like from a bank. If you break this formula, meaning that the formula equation result is such that you fail to meet the minimum requirement, you won't get the loan. So once you understand this formula, it's a very basic formula, I'll actually show you the software that you can get to actually do this as well yourself. Your loans, your ability to borrow money is dependent on this one formula. Who would agree that borrowing money in property is an important part? Yeah? Without it, it's very difficult. Yeah? Just, do I need it? Unless you've got cash every time you're going in, you're going to be borrowing money. That's an important part of building wealth through property. So if there is such a thing as a magic formula for wealth creation, this would be it. It's just the boring DSR ratios that banks use to assess whether you can borrow money or not. And once you understand that, you go, is that all? That's simple. We're going to talk about property portfolio structuring. How do you set up and structure your property portfolio, i.e. trusts, what happens to the money, where do the rentals go in, who pays the bills, how do you set up yourself correctly for accounting purposes, when you get audited, etc., etc. It's very simple, and there's only one way of really doing it. So I'm going to show you how to set it up correctly. The cool thing about this is, guys, you don't need to have all this in detail, because you know what? If you use any of the people that we work with, like Michelle Coleman, she just does the same thing for every client, so she wouldn't do it any other way, even if you ask her, so it's a really cool thing with 21st Century Property Direct, because all our associated, preferred partners, which are external companies, they're not linked to us in any way, but our solicitors, our quantity surveyors that we recommend our clients to go to, our mortgage brokers, our accountants, actually just set up the same thing for every client. So there's virtually very little deviation. However, what they set up is literally what 99% of the industry doesn't want you to have. So the loans that I recommend, the banks do not want you to have these loans. And they will actually do their best to sell you other structures. And I'll explain why they do that. It comes down to the fact that I don't make much money out of them, basically. Tomorrow is really cool. So we're going to have lunch for about 2 hours as well, network, at one stage, because you're going to be pretty tired. On-site due diligence and research.